Chapter 4. The morning after the reveal was one of the happiest Adrian could recall. He rose before his alarm, a slow smile drawing its way across his sleepy face as he stretched his way awake. His brain made no desperate demand for just 5 more minutes. In fact, Adrian was downright chipper as he sat up in bed, nearly 45 minutes before his usual wake-up call. Just enough time to get ready. Adrian made a beeline for the shower, intent on making himself as presentable as possible. Of course, he looked presentable every day. That was just part of being an agrest. But now there was a new sense of urgency to the practice. It's different now, he thought, brushing furiously at his teeth. Wet hair tickled his ears with the frenzied motion. This time, she knows it's me. True, Marinette saw Adrian nearly every day, and had never complained about the way he put himself together. Quite the opposite, in fact, he recalled with a touch of smugness. But things had cosmically shifted between the two. No longer was he a supermodel Adrian Agreste, able to make her swoon with just a smile alone. He was now Cat, unmasked, an amalgam, the two boys she had been chasing around both literally and metaphorically for the past 2 years. And no longer was she just Marinette, his sweetly shy classmate, so blindly enamored with the glamorous notions she had about him. She was Ladybug, his devoted partner and perhaps the only person who knew him as a whole, as the combined sum of his 2 lives. She was bold and inquisitive, infinitely compassionate and dangerously gifted. She was Paris's most renowned superhero, able to pull off amazing feats of heroism on a near-daily basis, while still seamlessly blending in with a crowd of regular teenagers when the mask came off. To put it lightly, she was quite honestly the most incredible person Adrian had ever had the pleasure of knowing. And needless to say, he had to step up his game if he wanted to keep her attention. Of course, that was easier said than done, it would seem. An hour's worth of work found Adrian still in his wardrobe, sitting cross-legged within his massive closet and on the verge of a complete breakdown. The entire contents of his wardrobe were scattered about him, piles of clothing he deemed not worthy of wearing around his lady stacked up on the carpet. Adrian let out a frustrated yell, flinging himself dramatically to the side with a defeated sigh. From his vantage point atop the armoire, Plague groaned at his friend's over-the-top display. He flew down to land on Adrian's shoulder, lifting clumps of blonde hair to stare down the boy directly. "You're making this much harder than it has to be. Dressing yourself is simple. Just put clothing on your body and walk out the door." Adrian replied with another plaintive groan, rolling over as he draped a forearms across the bridge of his nose. "I don't recall if I mentioned this to you or not, but I'll say it again just in case," Adrian enunciated excruciatingly. "Marinette is Ladybug." "Yes, you might have clued me in on that once, or a dozen times since yesterday," Plague replied with an equal amount of snark. "What I don't see is why that has anything to do with what you wear to school." "Oh, you don't know anything," Adrian lamented, pulling himself up into a sitting position as he surveyed the piles of designer clothing stacked up around him. He glanced at the wall clock, nearly choking as he saw the time displayed. "And I don't have time to explain it to you." Adrian went into full panic mode, yanking his fingers throughout his mussed-up hair in a last-ditch effort to tame it as he frantically pulled clothes from the floor. At the sound of his driver's final warning honk, Adrian stuffed himself into a simple black button-down, grabbing his bag with a curse as he skidded his way out the door. "You should know better than sleeping through your alarm," Natalie said in warning, handing Adrian his thankfully brief daily schedule as the teen rushed past her and down the main staircase. "Won't happen again," he yelled over his shoulder, yanking the front door open. Making his way to the silver sedan parked at the head of the driveway, Adrian felt an overwhelming mixture of excitement and trepidation at the day ahead of him. If nothing else, at least he had gym class to look forward to. She beat him to class. Typical. Marinette and Alia settled into their usual seats, the latter still ruthlessly grilling her best friend over the circumstances of the day before. 17 messages I sent you, Mary, and you couldn't even respond once to let me know you were still alive? I told you, I had a long shift at the bakery and ended up passing out early. That was a lie. Marinette had watched her phone blow up all night. She knew she was in the wrong frame of mind to answer, so she didn't, instead silencing her device in order to do some sorely needed thinking about a certain classmate/partner of hers. Speak of the devil, and so shall he appear. It was at that moment the boys decided to show up. Marinette could feel Alia watching the pair of them closely, but she ignored her suspicious friend to return Adrian's ecstatic smile. Mornin', she said cheerfully, delighted to hear no trace of stuttering in her greeting despite the fluttering in her chest. His grin grew wider. Good morning, Marinette, Adrian responded, dropping into a seat before pivoting to face the girls. Alia? Aggressed? Marinette elbowed her friend at her poisonous reply, turning to address Adrian once again. He looked especially nice today, she noted absently. Black really was his color. Oh, don't mind her. She's just grouchy. I didn't text her back last night. Alia just stared in response, eyes darting between the two before settling on Nino in an "Are you seeing this?" expression. The look went unnoticed by the two other teenagers, each of them prattling on about the day they had ahead of them. Unable to help herself, Marinette shifted her upper body towards the blonde, eyes narrowing as she issued her next challenge. So I hear today's dodgeball matchup is boys versus girls. You ready for round 2? Adrian hunkered forward, hands coming to rest on her desk and head cocked mischievously. He met her challenging gaze confidently, and when he responded, there wasn't a trace of anyone besides Cat Noir sitting in front of her. While it's my own personal prerogative to never target a lady, he drawled out, unaware of the gaping stares thrown their way by Alianina. I think I'll make an exception for today's game. I'm taking you out first, sucker. Bring it on, princess. A moment passed before the two broke into good-natured laughs, Adrian shooting her one last smile before turning in his seat at the sound of the first bell. Marinette settled back in her own chair, still pointedly dodging Alia's searching gaze as she attempted to focus on what their instructor was saying through the giddy delight she felt swirling around her head. This was bound to be good. They were, of course, the last two on the court. What had started as a battle of the sexes dodgeball match had quickly morphed into a game of stay the heck out of the way of Marinette and Adrian's line of sight. The pair was ruthless, so intent on getting each other out that anyone who happened to cross into their path of destruction was immediately eliminated. The teens played a death match, chipping away at the opposition until it was finally just one-on-one. The bench girls cried out for Adrian's head, urging Marinette to win one for the ladies. Likewise, the eliminated boys cheered on their champion, howling for Adrian to finish her off. The coach just stood confused. Never had she seen students having more fun watching dodgeball than playing it. I can do this forever, Marinette sung, spinning her way around each new projectile that came barreling towards her. Not with a ball in your gut, you can't, Adrian taunted back, preparing another volley of deadly rubber fire. Their classmates roared for blood, watching the two go at it for the next few minutes until Marinette watched with sadistic glee as Adrian twirled with eyes searching, only to find she had every single ball hoarded to her side of the court. She turned to her fallen teammates, hoisting her arms up in a gesture of victory as the girls screamed their praise like a band of harpies. Lazily scooping up a ball, Marinette returned her attention to the boy across from her, delighting in the way his shoulders stood up stiffly, face twisted into a pout. Any last words? She could not help but say, taking small strides towards the center line in order to finish him off. Adrian just shook his head, extending his arms in a gesture she mistook for defeat as she wound up the shot. Marinette let it fly, nearly falling over as she watched his hand snap towards his chest, just in time to make the catch. Cat grinned. "You're out," he said simply, letting the ball drop harmlessly to the ground as the whistle rung out. Marinette let out a feral yell, one that was drowned out by the absolute pandemonium of the boys' celebration. The winning team went nuts, flying off the bleachers with a childish chorus of "Oh!" as they surrounded their victor, shoving Adrian around triumphantly as they jumped and paced. Adrian took their praise with a toothy smile, accepting back thumps and fist bumps alike. But his real joy came from the salty look twisting at the features of his fallen lady. Marinette stalked around her side of the gym, letting out her frustration out on every ball she encountered by kicking them blindly towards the celebrating group. It wasn't more than a few seconds before the rest of her losing team joined in, the gym dissolving back into chaos as the girls rained havoc upon their male classmates. The whistle piped out again and again, but it was no use. Soon, both sides were at it, launching into a fierce, impromptu round of no rules, no outs dodgeball. Their coach just looked on hopelessly, shrugging her shoulders in a clear statement of, "I don't get paid enough to deal with this," before sitting back and letting the pandemonium run its course. Students crossed freely between the lines separating sides, jumping and tackling with screams and grunts and laughter as the entire class went at it. Marinette only had a moment to take in the turn of events before thundering over to where she saw a blonde head rise above the crowd, intent on exacting her revenge. He must have sensed her approach, because Adrian whirled just in time to deflect her first blow, laughing as the bright red Spitfire used the two balls in her grasp like boxing mitts, bringing them down upon him again and again. Adrian tangled his arms around the waist of the flailing girl, Marinette spitting out a stream of giggling trash talk as she continued to launch her assault. This went on for nearly 4 minutes, only ceasing when the bell signaling the start to their next period broke whatever spell had taken a hold. In a flurry of laughter and friendly threats, students dropped their weapons, filtering their way towards the locker rooms in a haze of breathless hilarity. This time, it was Alia doing the dragging, Marinette sending a very smug look Adrian a final warning to watch his back as she was hauled off through a set of heavy metal doors. The smile never left her face for the rest of the day, or the next.